The day my family disowned me, I wore a cream-colored sweater that still smelled like my morning coffee. I remember this detail vividly because I threw up on it twice before walking into my parents' house. Once from morning sickness, once from sheer terror. My name is Nicole, and at 23, I thought I had my life mapped out. Good job at a marketing firm, my own apartment, and a relationship I believed would last forever. Then 2 pink lines appeared on a pregnancy test, and my boyfriend disappeared faster than my savings account. Your what? My mother's teacup clattered against its saucer. Dad's newspaper lowered slowly, his reading glasses reflecting the afternoon sun streaming through our living room windows. I'm pregnant, I repeated, my voice steadier than I felt. And before you ask, yes, I'm keeping it. The silence that followed felt like a noose tightening around my neck. My brother Mason slouched deeper into the leather armchair, suddenly fascinated by his phone screen. This is unacceptable, Dad finally spoke, his voice carrying that familiar tone that brooked no argument. You will terminate this situation, or you will no longer be welcome in this house. Forrest, Mom whispered, but there was no real protest in her voice. I can't do that, I said, my hands protectively covering my still flat stomach. I won't. Then you leave us no choice. Dad stood up, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow over me. We've given you everything, the best education, opportunities, connections, and this is how you repay us? By becoming an unwed mother? I need help, I admitted, hating how my voice cracked. Just until I figure things out, please. You're asking us to support your poor choices? Mom's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her teacup. What will people say? Who cares what people say, I shot back. I'm your daughter. A daughter who should know better, Dad cut in. Mason, leave us. My brother stood without a word, avoiding my eyes as he shuffled out. Some support system he was. I've already lost my job, I continued, desperate now. The morning sickness. I couldn't keep up with the hours. I just need a little help until... Until what? Dad's voice rose. Until you've completely destroyed our family's reputation? Until you're another welfare statistic? I'll pay you back, I promised. Every cent. I just need... Enough! Dad slammed his hand on the coffee table, making Mom jump. You made your choice. Now live with it. When you realize what a mistake you're making, you'll come crawling back. But until then, you are no longer welcome here. Mom? I turned to her, tears streaming down my face. Please. She looked away, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Listen to your father, Nicole. I stood on shaky legs, my cream sweater suddenly feeling like it was made of lead. So, that's it? 23 years of being your daughter, and this is what breaks us? You broke us, Dad corrected. Now get out. I walked to the door, each step feeling like I was wading through concrete. As I reached for the handle, Mom's voice stopped me. When you come to your senses, she said softly, we'll be here. I turned back one last time, memorizing their faces. Dad's stern disapproval, Mom's artificial grief, and through the dining room doorway, Mason's guilty expression as he pretended not to watch. No, I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong. When I succeed, because I will succeed, don't you dare try to take credit for the person I become. You lost that right today. The door closed behind me with a quiet click that felt more final than any slam could have. In my car, I sat staring at the house I grew up in, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed, a text from Mason. They'll come around, just do what they want. I blocked his number without responding. That night, in my small apartment, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. My mascara had created dark rivers down my cheeks, and my cream sweater was wrinkled and stained. But as I placed my hands on my stomach, I felt something shift inside me. Not the baby, it was too early for that. It was something else, something harder, stronger. It's just you and me, little one, I whispered to my reflection. And I promise you this, we won't just survive, we'll thrive. And one day, they'll regret throwing us away. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would become, or how 12 years later, they would come back to haunt my family in ways none of us could have imagined. But that night, alone in my bathroom, I made a vow that would change everything. I would succeed, not despite being alone, but because of it. 6 months pregnant and living on ramen noodles wasn't exactly the glamorous life I'd imagined for myself. My tiny studio apartment had become both my sanctuary and my prison, with stacks of business books borrowed from the library creating makeshift furniture. "You need to eat real food," Caitlin said, barging in with grocery bags. I'd met her at a prenatal yoga class, and she'd appointed herself my unofficial guardian angel. "Your baby can't live on pride and instant noodles alone." "I can't accept," I started, but she was already filling my mini fridge. "Shut up and help me put these away," she interrupted, tossing me an apple. "And then we're talking about that business plan you keep mentioning." I caught the apple, my other hand absently rubbing my growing belly. "It's just an idea." "Ideas pay bills now?" She raised an eyebrow. "Spill it." Setting down the apple, I pulled out my laptop. "Look, I've been doing freelance social media management for some local businesses. Small stuff, but they're happy with the results." Caitlin peered at my screen. "Show me." I pulled up the Instagram accounts I'd been managing. "This boutique's engagement is up 200% since I started, and this restaurant's online orders increased by 45% last month." "Not bad," she nodded, scrolling through the content. "How much are you charging?" $200 per month, per client?" Caitlin's head snapped up. "Are you insane? You're practically working for free." "I need the experience." "You need to pay rent," she cut me off. "Listen, I work in marketing. These results? They're worth at least $1,000 per client, minimum." My heart started racing. No one would pay that much for someone working from their couch. "Wrong." Caitlin grabbed my notebook. "You're not selling social media management. You're selling results, ROI, growth." She started writing furiously. "You need a proper business name, a website, and packages." "I can't afford—" "I know a web developer who owes me a favor," she waved off my protest. "And my company's looking to outsource some social media work. If you can handle it, I'll recommend you." I stared at her, my throat tight. "Why are you helping me?" Caitlin's pen stopped moving. "Because 6 years ago, I was you. Different circumstances, same terror. Someone helped me. Now I'm helping you." She pushed the notebook toward me. "But you have to help yourself first. Are you in?" That night, after Caitlin left, I worked until 3 a.m., building my business plan. My back ached, my feet were swollen, but for the first time since that day in my parents' house, I felt hope. The next week was a blur. Caitlin's developer friend built me a simple but professional website. I created proper pricing packages, portfolios, and proposals. Then came the moment of truth, my first meeting with a potential major client. "I'm pregnant, not incompetent," I told my reflection, adjusting my blazer over my bump. The client meeting was at a local coffee shop, and I arrived early, settling into a corner table with my laptop. "Nicole?" A woman in a sharp suit approached. "I'm Sarah from Bloom Cosmetics. Caitlin spoke highly of you." The meeting started rough. I could see the doubt in Sarah's eyes when she saw my condition. But as I walked her through my strategy and showed her my results, something shifted. "These numbers are impressive," she admitted, studying my proposal. "But I have concerns about your availability." "I understand," I said, my hand steady as I took a sip of water. "That's why I've built a contingency plan into the proposal. You'll notice I've included backup support and guaranteed response times, regardless of my personal circumstances." Sarah looked surprised, then smiled. "You've really thought this through." "I have to," I said simply. "Failure isn't an option for me." 2 hours later, I had my first major contract, worth more than all my previous clients combined. As I walked home, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, my mother. "Heard you're doing some computer work. Hope you're being realistic about your situation." I deleted the message without responding. Opening my laptop, I started working on my next proposal. My son kicked, and I smiled, placing my hand on my belly. "See that, little one? Mommy just landed her first big fish. And trust me, there are plenty more in the sea." Looking at my reflection in the laptop screen, I barely recognized myself. The scared girl in the cream sweater was gone. In her place was someone new, someone stronger, someone determined, someone who was just getting started. As I worked into the night, I didn't know that this contract would be the first stepping stone to something much bigger. But I knew one thing for certain. I'd rather eat ramen forever than crawl back to those who threw me away. Mom, you're going to be late for your own meeting, Darius called from the kitchen, his 12-year-old voice cracking with exasperation. 1 minute, I shouted back, frantically searching for my presentation tablet. The irony wasn't lost on me. 12 years ago, I was alone in a studio apartment, and now I was running a digital marketing agency from my downtown office with 30 employees. Darius appeared in my doorway, holding my tablet. Looking for this? It was in the kitchen. Again. I grabbed it, kissing his forehead. What would I do without you? Probably still be looking for your keys, he grinned, dangling them from his finger, which were in the fridge, by the way. That was one time, I protested, but we both knew it wasn't. Running a company while being a single mom meant some things fell through the cracks. Fortunately, my son had inherited my organizational skills, minus my tendency to misplace everything. Autumn called, he said, following me downstairs. She said the client's already at the office. I groaned. Autumn, my first real hire and now my right hand, had warned me about scheduling an 8 a.m. meeting. Did you eat breakfast? Yes, Mom. Did you? I'll grab something at... Nope. He thrust a protein smoothie into my hand. Drink. You're impossible before your first meal. As we headed to the car, my phone buzzed. I nearly dropped it when I saw the name. Mason. Everything okay? Darius asked, noticing my expression. Fine, I said, declining the call. Just work stuff. But it wasn't fine. Mason hadn't called in years. Last I'd heard, he was running my parents' investment portfolio into the ground with risky ventures. At the office, Autumn was waiting with barely contained panic. They're in the conference room, all of them. All of who? I asked, straightening my blazer. The entire board of Maxwell Industries, not just their marketing team, the CEO, CFO, everyone. I felt my stomach flip. Maxwell Industries was huge. Landing them would double our company's size overnight. Why didn't you call me earlier? I did, 3 times. Check your phone. Right. I'd been too distracted by Mason's call. You've got this, Mom, Darius whispered, giving me a quick hug before heading to the break room where he usually did his homework during my meetings. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the conference room. 8 pairs of eyes turned to me. Good morning, I smiled, projecting confidence I didn't quite feel. I apologize for the delay. Shall we begin? 2 hours later, I walked out with a signed contract and shaking hands. Autumn followed me to my office, clutching her tablet. We did it, she breathed. We actually did it. We did, I agreed, sinking into my chair. Schedule a team meeting for... My office door burst open. Mason stood there, looking nothing like the brother I remembered. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his eyes wild. Nice place, he said, looking around. Really nice. How did you get in here? I demanded, standing. Told reception I was your brother. Which I am, remember? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Though you might have forgotten, being too busy building your empire to return calls. Autumn, give us a minute, I said quietly. She hesitated, then left, closing the door behind her. What do you want, Mason? He collapsed into a chair. Can't a brother visit his successful sister? After 12 years of silence? Yeah, well, he ran a hand through his hair. Things aren't great. Dad's investments. There were some complications. Complications? I raised an eyebrow. You mean you lost their money? Not all of it, he protested weakly. Just most of it. And the house might be... Might be what? In foreclosure. He wouldn't meet my eyes. They don't know I'm here. But Nick, they're going to lose everything. I stared at him, memories flooding back. The cream sweater, the morning sickness, the slammed door. And what exactly do you expect me to do about it? Come on, Nick, look at this place. You're obviously doing well. They're our parents. Are they? I stood up, walking to the window. Where were they when I was eating ramen and working 18-hour days? Where were you? We made mistakes, he admitted. But, no buts, I cut him off. You don't get to disappear for 12 years and then show up asking for money. Through the glass wall, I could see Darius in the break room, working on his homework. My son, who had never met his grandparents, who had never had an uncle at his birthday parties. Get out, Mason. Nick, please. Out, before I call security. He stood slowly, straightening his rumpled jacket. They were right, you know. You did come back, just not crawling like they expected. As he left, I watched Darius through the glass, feeling a storm brewing on the horizon. I'd built all this from nothing, protecting my son from the pain of rejection. But something told me our peaceful life was about to get complicated. Your brother did what? Caitlin's voice crackled through my car's speakers as I drove home from work. Showed up at my office begging for money, I replied, checking the rearview mirror where Darius was absorbed in his phone. Apparently they're losing the house. Good, Caitlin said flatly. Karma's a... Language, I interrupted, glancing at Darius again. But yeah, pretty much. Mom, Darius looked up. Who were you talking about earlier? In your office? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Just some old acquaintances, honey. That man called himself your brother. I heard him through the door. Of course he had. My too smart, too observant son never missed anything. We'll talk about it at home, I promised, catching his eye in the mirror. He nodded, but I could see the questions forming. My phone buzzed with a text. Caitlin again. Check your email. You need to see this. At home, after getting Darius started on his homework, I opened my laptop. The email Caitlin had forwarded was from a local business newsletter. Tucker Investments faces bankruptcy amid fraud allegations, leading investment firm under investigation for mismanagement of client funds. My hands started shaking as I read further. Mason hadn't just lost our parents' money. He'd lost everyone's money. The article detailed failed ventures, suspicious transfers, and mounting lawsuits. Mom? Darius stood in my office doorway. Can we have that talk now? I closed the laptop. Come here, buddy. He sat on the couch beside my desk, looking so grown up it made my heart ache. That man today? He's really your brother? Yes, I admitted. Your Uncle Mason. And my grandparents? Are they still alive? They are. Then why haven't I ever met them? I took a deep breath. Because they made a choice, a long time ago, before you were born. Because of me? His voice was small. No, I said firmly, moving to sit beside him. Because of their pride and their prejudice. Never because of you. I told him everything. The pregnancy, the ultimatum, the years of struggle. His eyes grew wider with each detail. So they just threw you away? Because you were having me? They thought they were teaching me a lesson, I said softly. They thought I'd come back begging for help. But you didn't. No, I didn't. I had something better to fight for. I squeezed his hand. I had you. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. The text made my blood run cold. Your father's in the hospital. Heart attack. Mason says you're doing well. Please help. Mom. Darius read the message over my shoulder. Are you going to help them? I don't know, I answered honestly. If it was me, he said slowly, and I made a huge mistake, I'd want a chance to fix it. When did you get so wise? I asked, ruffling his hair. Must be all those protein smoothies you make me drink, he grinned. My phone rang. Autumn this time. Nicole, you need to turn on the news. Now. I grabbed the remote, switching on the office TV. There was my father's investment firm, police tape across the entrance. The caption read, Major financial firm collapses. Thousands lose life savings. That's them? Darius asked quietly. My grandparents? I nodded, unable to speak, as the reporter detailed the extent of the damage. Retirement accounts wiped out, college funds vanished, lives destroyed. Another text from my mother. Please, we have nowhere else to go. What are you going to do? Darius asked. I looked at my son, this amazing boy who had never known his grandparents' love but still had the capacity for compassion. Then I looked around my office, at everything I'd built from nothing, without their help or support. I don't know, I repeated. But whatever I decide, we'll decide together. Because we're a team? Always. I hugged him close, feeling his warmth against my chest. But right now, you need to finish your homework while I make some calls. As he left the room, I stared at my mother's text. 12 years ago, they'd slammed their door in my face. Now they were the ones with nowhere to go. My finger hovered over the reply button as another news alert popped up. Tucker family faces criminal charges in investment scandal. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd thrown me out to avoid a scandal, and now they were at the center of one far worse than an unmarried pregnant daughter. I started typing a response, then stopped. Whatever I decided would change everything, not just for them, but for me and Darius too. The question was, after 12 years of silence, did they deserve a second chance? The doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m., 3 days after my father's heart attack. I knew who it was before I opened the door. My security system had caught their taxi pulling up. "Nicole," my mother whispered, her designer clothes wrinkled, her face bare of the makeup she'd never been seen without. Beside her, my father stood silently, looking smaller than I remembered, one hand clutching his chest. "You look—" Mom trailed off, taking in my silk pajamas and the elegant foyer behind me. "Successful?" I supplied. "Funny how that happened without your help." "Please," Dad spoke for the first time, his voice rough. "We have nowhere else to go." I stood in the doorway, remembering another doorway 12 years ago. "Where's Mason?" "Gone," Mom's voice cracked. "He took what was left and disappeared." Of course he had. Classic Mason. "Mom?" Darius's voice came from behind me. "Is everything okay?" I turned to see him on the stairs, wearing his Star Wars pajamas, looking impossibly young and vulnerable. My parents' eyes locked onto him. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "Is that—" Dad started. "Your grandson?" I finished. "Yes, the one you never wanted to meet." Darius descended the stairs slowly, studying them with the same analytical gaze he used on complex math problems. "I'm Darius," he said simply, coming to stand beside me. "You're the ones who kicked my mom out." Mom flinched. Dad's face went ashen. "Darius," I touched his shoulder, "go back to bed. I'll handle this." "No," he said firmly. "If they're staying here, I want to be part of the decision." I looked at my son, this wonderful, mature person I'd raised alone, and nodded. "Okay, living room, everyone." They followed us in silence, taking in the modern art on the walls, the expensive furniture, the view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. "You've done very well," Dad commented, lowering himself carefully onto the couch. "No thanks to you," I replied. "Why are you here?" "The banks took everything," Mom explained, her hands twisting in her lap. "The house, the cars. Mason had power of attorney. He did exactly what you trained him to do," I cut in. "Take whatever he wanted without considering the consequences." "We made mistakes," Dad admitted, and I nearly fell over from shock. He'd never admitted to a mistake in his life. "Mistakes?" I laughed bitterly. "You abandoned your pregnant daughter because you were worried about your reputation. How's that reputation working out for you now?" "Nicole, please," Mom begged. "We know we don't deserve your help." "You're right, you don't." "Then why did you let us in?" Dad asked quietly. I looked at Darius, who had been watching the exchange with intense focus. "Because my son believes in second chances, and because I refuse to become what you are, people who turn their backs on family." "We can pay you back," Dad started, but I held up my hand. "No, if you stay here, it's not a loan, it's not an investment, and it comes with conditions." They waited, hardly breathing. "First, you will never again question my choices or my parenting. Second, you will treat Darius with the respect and love he deserves, not because you need something from us, but because he's your grandson. Third, you will get jobs. Real jobs, not investment schemes." "Jobs?" Mom looked horrified. "At our age?" "My company needs a receptionist," I said coolly. "And Dad, I hear Walmart is hiring greeters." Darius snorted, quickly covering it with a cough. "The guest house out back is furnished," I continued. You can stay there until you get back on your feet. But one step out of line, one hint of your old attitudes, and you're out. Clear?" They nodded, looking shell-shocked. "Darius, what do you think?" I turned to my son. He studied his grandparents for a long moment. "I think everyone deserves a chance to be better, even them." I hugged him close, breathing in his familiar scent. "Then it's settled. Autumn will show you to the guest house." As if on cue, Autumn appeared. She'd been waiting in the kitchen, ready to help if needed. "This way," she said professionally, though I caught the slight edge in her voice. She'd been with me long enough to know my story. As they followed her out, Mom turned back. "Nicole, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," I replied. "Proving you've changed will be harder than anything you've ever done." After they left, Darius and I stood looking out at the city lights. "Are we doing the right thing?" I asked him. "You always say success is the best revenge," he replied thoughtfully. "Maybe forgiveness is even better." I kissed his forehead, marveling at his wisdom. "When did you get so smart?" "Must be genetics," he grinned. "From my mom's side, obviously." As we headed upstairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was either the beginning of healing or the biggest mistake of my life. Only time would tell which. "Good morning, Tucker Digital Marketing. How may I direct your call?" Hearing my mother's voice answer the office phone still felt surreal, even after 2 weeks. She'd taken to the receptionist role with surprising dedication, though I caught her wincing every time she had to wear the company polo shirt instead of her usual designer blouses. "Your mother's actually pretty good at this," Autumn said, dropping a stack of reports on my desk. "She hasn't made a single mistake with the call routing system." "Desperation is a powerful motivator," I replied, signing the documents. "And your father?" I glanced out my window at the Walmart across the street, still greeting, still hating every minute of it. The door burst open and Darius rushed in, backpack swinging. "Mom, Grandma taught me how to make her special lasagna last night." I froze. "She was at our house?" "I invited her," he said defensively. "You said they could visit if I wanted." "And your grandfather?" "Still at work. Grandma says his feet hurt too much after standing all day." I bit back a smile. The mighty Forrest Tucker, brought low by orthopedic shoes and a blue vest. "Speaking of dinner," Darius continued, "I invited them both over tonight, for a family dinner." "You what?" "We need to talk about Uncle Mason," he said firmly. "Grandma's been crying about him, and I heard Grandpa on the phone with the police yesterday. Sometimes I forgot my son was 12, not 40. Honey, that's adult business." "It's family business," he corrected, "and I'm family." I sighed, looking at Autumn for help, but she just shrugged. The kid's got a point. That evening, I watched my mother set my dining room table with trembling hands, while my father sat stiffly in an armchair, still in his Walmart uniform. "Dinner's ready," Darius called from the kitchen. He'd insisted on helping remake the lasagna his grandmother had taught him. We sat down, an awkward rectangle of tension and unsaid words. The lasagna steamed between us like a peace offering. "This is delicious," I admitted after a few bites. Mom beamed at Darius. "He's a natural in the kitchen," she said. "Just like you were at his age, before." "Before you threw me out," I finished silently. "Have you heard from Mason?" Darius asked, cutting through the tension. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. "Darius, that's not—" "Not what? Dinner conversation?" Darius challenged. "Mom always says we should be honest about hard things." "The police think he's in Mexico," Dad said quietly, "with what's left of the money." "How much?" I asked. "3 million, Mom whispered, "plus whatever he skimmed before." "Before he destroyed hundreds of lives?" I finished. "Before he ruined your reputation? The very thing you were so desperate to protect 12 years ago?" "Nicole," Dad started, but I wasn't finished. "You know what's funny? You threw me out because you were worried about what people would think of an unmarried pregnant daughter. Now you're working minimum wage jobs because your golden child committed fraud. Tell me, which scandal was worse?" "We know we were wrong," Mom's voice cracked. "About everything." "Do you?" I stood up, my chair scraping back. "Because from where I'm standing, you're only here because you have no choice. If Mason hadn't stolen everything, If you weren't facing criminal investigations, would you ever have acknowledged your grandson? That's not fair, Dad protested. Fair? I laughed. Was it fair to throw out your pregnant daughter? Was it fair to miss 12 years of Darius's life? Mom, Darius touched my arm. They're trying. Are they? Or are they just surviving? The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Through the glass panels, I saw a familiar silhouette. No, Mom gasped. It can't be. I opened the door. Mason stood there, tanned and wearing an expensive suit, looking like he'd just stepped off a beach rather than fled the country. Hey, sis, he grinned. Heard you're taking in strays these days. Mason! Mom started to rise, but Dad grabbed her arm. You've got some nerve, I said coldly. Come on, Nick. Family helps family, right? Isn't that why Mom and Dad are here? Get out. Not without my share, he stepped forward. I know you're loaded now. Consider it payback for all those years they chose you over me, he laughed. Oh, wait, that's right. They didn't. Uncle Mason? Darius appeared beside me. Mason's confidence faltered for a moment. This must be my nephew. Hey, kid, want to help your uncle out? I pushed Darius behind me. Autumn, call security. Already did, she replied from the hallway. And the police. Mason's smile disappeared. You wouldn't. Watch me, I said, hearing sirens in the distance. Some family ties deserve to be cut. The police arrived within minutes, their lights painting my dining room in alternating red and blue. Mason tried to run, but didn't make it past my security guards at the gate. Mrs. Tucker, one officer said, handcuffing Mason. We've been looking for your brother. He's no brother of mine, I replied, watching as they read him his rights. You'll regret this, Mason shouted as they led him away. Mom, Dad, tell her! But our parents stayed silent, watching their son being escorted to a police car. The golden child's halo had finally tarnished beyond repair. After the police left, we returned to the dining table. The lasagna had gone cold, but no one seemed to notice as we mechanically picked at our food. He was always so smart, Mom broke the silence, her voice small. Where did we go wrong? You want a list? I set down my fork. You spoiled him, enabled him, chose him over me. We thought we were protecting the family name, Dad said quietly. How'd that work out for you? Nicole, Darius touched my arm. Maybe now's the time for truth, not anger. I looked at my son, seeing wisdom beyond his years, and took a deep breath. Okay, truth. Let's have it. We were wrong, Dad said, his voice breaking. About everything. About you, about Mason, about what really matters. When we saw you today, Mom continued, facing Mason, protecting Darius. We saw what real strength looks like, what real parenting looks like. It's a little late for parenting lessons, don't you think? Yes, Dad admitted, but maybe not too late to learn from our mistakes. Learn what? I challenged. That actions have consequences? That throwing away your daughter because she didn't fit your perfect family image was wrong? That maybe, just maybe, the pregnant, unmarried daughter wasn't the disappointment after all? We know, Mom whispered. Watching you run your company, raise Darius, handle everything with such grace, while we let Mason destroy everything because we couldn't see past our pride. Grace? I laughed bitterly. You think letting you stay here was grace? It was spite. I wanted you to see exactly what you threw away. I wanted you to know what it feels like to depend on someone else's mercy. The table fell silent. Darius reached for my hand under the table, squeezing it gently. You succeeded, Dad said finally. Every day at Walmart, every time someone I used to do business with comes through my line, I feel it. The shame isn't in wearing this vest or greeting customers. The shame is in knowing I chose pride over my daughter. And every time I answer your company's phones, Mom added, I'm reminded that my daughter built this empire while I was too busy worrying about country club gossip to be her mother. I don't need a mother anymore, I said sharply. And Darius has done just fine without grandparents. But I'd like to know them, Darius spoke up. The real them, not who they used to be. I looked at my son, then at my parents. Really looked at them. Dad's uniform was meticulously pressed despite being Walmart polyester. Mom's company polo was adorned with a small silver pin, her one concession to her former style. They were trying in their own way. "When you kicked me out," I said slowly, "you said I'd come crawling back. But here you are, living in my guest house, working jobs I helped you get, eating at my table. How does it feel?" "Humbling," Dad answered, "and deserved." "We don't expect forgiveness," Mom added. "We don't deserve it. But maybe what? Maybe we can earn the right to be part of your life. Both of your lives," she looked at Darius. "Not as the people we were, but as the people we're trying to become." I felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "And if I say no? Then we'll respect that," Dad said. "We've lost the right to demand anything." Darius squeezed my hand again. "Mom always says everyone deserves a second chance if they're truly sorry. Are you? Truly sorry?" My parents looked at each other, then back at us. "Yes," they said in unison. "Then maybe," I said carefully, "we can try. Not as daughter and parents, not yet, but as people who share a past and might share a future, if you prove yourselves worthy of it." "That's all we ask," Mom whispered. "But understand this," I continued, my voice firm. "Darius is my priority, always. If this experiment hurts him in any way, we're done. Permanently." They nodded, understanding the weight of my words. As we resumed eating our cold lasagna, I felt something shift in the room. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of something new, built on the ashes of what we'd burned down 12 years ago. "And that's why we're here today," I concluded, standing at the podium. The business conference room was packed with aspiring entrepreneurs, all eyes fixed on me. "Any questions?" I asked, scanning the crowd. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. "How did you find the strength to start over with nothing?" "I had everything," I replied. "I had my son, and I had my determination. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed helps you find what you actually need." Another hand shot up. "And your parents? After everything?" I glanced at the back of the room where my mother sat in her company polo shirt, taking registration details for the conference. My father would be finishing his shift at Walmart soon. He'd been promoted to department manager last week. "They're learning," I said, "and so am I. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive isn't others, it's yourself." After the session, Darius met me in my office, homework spread across my conference table. "How'd it go?" "Good, though I still hate public speaking." "Could have fooled me," Autumn said, walking in with coffee. "The crowd loved you, especially the part about Mason." My brother's trial had made headlines. He'd taken a plea deal, trading information about his offshore accounts for a reduced sentence. The recovered money was being returned to the investors he'd defrauded. "Mom?" Darius looked up from his math. "Grandma asked if we're still on for Sunday dinner." I smiled. Our weekly family dinners had become a tradition over the past few months. Not always easy, not always comfortable, but necessary, like lance to wound, letting the poison out slowly. "Yes, but remind her no fancy china this time. Paper plates work just fine." "She's trying," Darius grinned. "Yesterday she actually ate a hot dog from the Walmart cafeteria. Now that's progress." My phone buzzed, a text from Dad. "Proud of you today. Your speech reminded me how far we've all come, and how far I still have to go to deserve being your father again." "Everything okay?" Darius asked, noticing my expression. "Yeah," I showed him the text. "Just your grandfather being surprisingly self-aware." "He's different now," Darius observed. "They both are. Less stuck up." "Amazing what some humble pie can do." "And some forgiveness," he added carefully. I walked to my office window, looking out at the city I'd conquered on my own terms. Forgiveness is earned, not given. They're earning it day by day. Like when Grandma defended you to her old country club friends last week? I turned back to him. "How did you know about that?" "I heard her on the phone. Some lady was gossiping about our family, and Grandma told her she was proud of her daughter who built a business from nothing while raising an amazing grandson. Then she hung up and canceled her membership." My throat tightened. Mom hadn't mentioned that. A knock at my door interrupted us. My parents stood there, looking uncertain. We thought, Mom started, maybe we could take you both to dinner to celebrate your speech? Walmart cafeteria? I teased. Actually, Dad cleared his throat. We were thinking that hot dog cart you like, the one by the park. I raised an eyebrow. In your designer clothes? We'll manage, Mom smiled. Some things are more important than dry cleaning bills. Looking at them, really looking, I saw what Darius meant. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something softer, more genuine. They weren't the parents who threw me out, just as I wasn't the scared girl in the cream sweater anymore. Okay, I nodded, but I'm buying. Nicole, Dad started to protest. My treat, I insisted. Consider it an investment in our future. As we walked to the elevator, Darius between his grandparents chattering about his math test, I caught my reflection in the chrome doors. Success was supposed to be my revenge, showing them exactly what they'd thrown away. But maybe the sweetest revenge wasn't in making them see what they'd lost, but in showing them what they could still gain, if they were willing to do the work, to earn their place in our lives. Mom, Darius called, holding the elevator. You coming? I joined my family in the elevator, watching the numbers descend. We weren't perfect. We weren't even fully healed, but we were trying, all of us, to build something new from the ashes of what we'd burned. And maybe that was the biggest success story of all. Race you to the hot dog cart, Darius challenged his grandparents. In these shoes? Mom laughed, then kicked them off, holding them in her hands. Okay, kiddo, you're on. I watched them run across the lobby, my mother in her stocking feet, my father's Walmart badge glinting under the lights, my son's laughter echoing off the marble walls. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply living well enough to give second chances, even to those who once denied you yours.